Welcome to another edition of Saving the Great Indoors. I'm your host, Bob Krell, and we have an interesting show for you this month. We'll talk about the delicate balance between building performance, energy savings, and indoor air quality, and check in with Carl Grimes at the Environment and Health Conference in Basel, Switzerland. But first, it's that time of year again, where kids sulk and parents rejoice. Labor Day weekend signals the symbolic end of summer, and with it, of course, the start of a new school year. In our September back-to-school issue of Healthy Indoors magazine, we take a look at the indoor environments of our schools. But what about those environments? With all the budget cuts, are classrooms actually a good place to foster learning? How about the ventilation in schools, for example? A 2011 Institute of Medicine report found that one's ability for critical thinking diminishes once indoor carbon dioxide levels exceed 1,000 parts per million. Maybe little Bobby isn't inattentive. He might just be running out of air. No, really, I wasn't that bad a student. And to save money, my school only had enough air for half the students, so we had to share. Recent studies suggest that CO2 levels far exceed that 1,000 part per million level in many classrooms in the U.S., according to Claire Barnett of the Healthy Schools Network.
Inside, in an indoor classroom, the measurements across the country are astounding. They can go, I was in Austin for the International IAQ symposium back in, was it 2010, 2011, and when the IOM report was released. And the presentation there from a major district in North Carolina was that they were measuring CO2 at 3,000 and 4,000 parts per million in kindergarten and chemistry classrooms in their building. Well, the new science will show you that CO2 at 1,000 ppm is where critical thinking, executive functioning starts to decline. You know, that's really extraordinary for people who can't think, people who can't remember, people who are starting to fall asleep, they're having difficulty concentrating, and it's only because there's no ventilation in the classroom. So you don't really need a social worker or a school counselor or another school nurse to fill this position to figure out why people appear to be depressed or moody or unhappy. They're not, they just need a little fresh air.
Check out the full interview with Claire Barnett in this month's issue of Healthy Indoors magazine. I got to sit down with Allison Bailes at a recent industry event and speak with him about building performance issues.
We're really excited to speak with you just about some of the things that you've been doing in the industry. I know that you run a regular blog, it's a weekly.
Yep. Well, no, I actually write 2 or 3 times a week.
And what's your focus primarily with your blog?
Primarily building science, which covers a lot of ground. I write everything from how to insulate a wall properly, to indoor air quality issues, to high-level debates about ASHRAE standards and all kinds of stuff like that.
So, what are your feelings as far as getting this information out to consumers? You know, do you feel that the industry so far is doing a good job of doing that, or do you think we're lacking in that respect?
Judging by the questions I get from people and the lack of knowledge of homeowners and contractors and a wide range of people, there needs to be a lot more education. A lot of the stuff I write is aimed at people who don't really know the stuff, whether they're contractors or homeowners or program people. I write so that I can explain the basic concepts and but not really dumb it down. Vapor barriers are now called Class 1 vapor retarders. So they're things that pretty much stop the diffusion of water vapor from one place to another. And generally, they're only good in really extreme climates where it's a one-way climate. So in a really cold climate where you pretty much have no cooling load in the summer, you've got the water vapor on the inside of the house. You've got the more humid air is inside the house. And outside in the wintertime, you've got cold air, which is very dry air because cold air can't hold much moisture. So moisture can diffuse through the building assemblies, and if something stops it in the wrong place, you can get condensation there, and that can rot materials. And so in a cold climate, you want the vapor retarder on the inside of the assembly.
Because that's where
because
really
the humid,
most moisture
yeah,
load is on the inside.
humidity is inside. If you put the vapor barrier on the outside and the moist air gets to it and condenses, then you can get all the materials there wet and grow mold and rot the stuff. So, and in a one-way hot, humid climate, you would put the vapor retarder on the outside. But generally, in the lower 48 anyway, you don't have to worry about vapor barriers at all. The climates aren't extreme enough, pretty much anywhere in the lower 48 to need one.
Basel, Switzerland was the host site for Environment and Health, bridging north, south, east, and west, which was the first joint meeting of ISEE, ISES, and ISIAC. The event drew more than 1,700 people from more than 70 countries. One of those people was ISIAC's Carl Grimes, a man with some interesting perspectives on buildings, people, and our indoor environments.
You don't have to have a whole building damp for it to have a mold problem.
Sure,
You
it can be
just need
localized.
certain areas of it.
Yeah.
Localized. You have an environment that is
It
conducive
usually is
to it.
localized. Yeah, I mean, condensing planes and things like that. I mean, you see that all the time.
There's so much more about this conference that it's like trying to get a sip of water from a fire hose. And
or the Rhine River.
It's yes, or the Rhine River.
Sorry.
Oh,
I can't resist.
That's an experience. Yeah, I know, but that's an experience I'll never forget.
Oh, that's great.
That was. What is it about swimming or floating in a river that could be so fine? But there's something about the water or the experience or the hundreds and hundreds of other people do. You know, some people that were floating down with us were even yodeling. I mean, how much more Swiss can you get than that?
I don't know, but I'm more disturbed by the thought that I could be at a hotel in Switzerland drinking water that you were bathing in. I'm troubled by that, Carl.
Well, I'm not, because, you know, my stuff is okay. It's yours that's the problem.